The Lauson 55 series is comprised of models 55A, 55AB, and 55S. The 55 series was probably created in another attempt to decrease manufacturing costs and produce an economy version of the RSH engine model type. The first example is the 55A that you now see on the left. This engine is, basically, an RSH but with sleeve bearings instead of ball bearings, no bearing inserts on the connecting rod, and no oil pump and dipper trough. It merely employs simple splashed lubrication. The engine in the middle is a 55AB, basically a 55A but with a ball bearing on the power takeoff side of the crankshaft and using the RSH type engine block. In every other respect, it is a 55A. The engine on the right is a 55S, the suction carburetor version of the engines on the left. With its suction carburetor and rear-mounted rectangular gas tank, it closely resembles engines such as the immensely popular Briggs 5S and 6S. As part of the general upgrade of their engines after the war, Lauson replaced the TLC with a cast iron TLH. The engine you see now is a TLH 725. This engine closely resembles the TLC, but is stated to be a 3 horsepower engine. With the introduction of the TLH, Lauson also produced the TLV, the engine which you currently see. This engine is a TLH model turned on its side to create the vertical shaft TLV. Much of the engineering that went into the RSV is shared by this engine. I have no idea for what this engine was used. The TLV is an uncommon engine, and I suspect there was little call for a 3 horsepower, 50-pound vertical shaft engine. In 1954, Lauson brought to market its first what I call third-generation engine design, the model type SLV. This engine was a radical departure from the engines Lauson had been building up to that time. The SLV was a 2 horsepower vertical shaft alloy block engine with an air vane governor. This was the first commercial alloy block engine Lauson produced, though previously Lauson built many alloy block engines during World War II. And it is the first engine Lauson had produced with an air vane governor. This engine has a cast iron sleeve, and it appears that, with its third-generation design, Lauson chose to abandon its classic valve placement and position both the intake and exhaust valves at the rear of the engine block. The red engine in this video is my model type SLV. 2 years later, and several months after the purchase of Lauson by Tecumseh, the model type VA was introduced. The VA was basically an SLV with a slightly larger bore, giving the engine 2.5 horsepower, and is the orange engine you see in this video. Don't confuse the large cast iron overhead valve engine first produced in 1929 that you saw at the beginning of this video series with this small vertical shaft alloy block engine. Though they both share the same major model designation, VA, they are 2 completely different engines, with their date of manufacture separated by 25 years. In 1958, most of the Lauson Manufacturing Company models were discontinued, including the SLV and VA, and Tecumseh reintroduced the V-Series as an alloy block vertical shaft engine, which was basically an upgraded SLV design. Tecumseh went on to produce many horizontal and vertical shaft engine designs based on this SLV design. These engines had the same pressurized oil system as the SLV, and they were considered excellent engines in their day. The Lauson Manufacturing Company was purchased by Tecumseh in January of 1956, and after that date, the new Holstein plant was operated as the Tecumseh Power Division. Still, Lauson had a huge influence on the early engines that Tecumseh produced. and I would assume that many of the early Tecumseh engines were, to different degrees, products of the old Lauson engineering department. It cannot be denied that Tecumseh produced some quality engines in the early days of the Tecumseh Power Division, and I have heard more than one old-timer state that Tecumseh was the only company prior to 1980 that ever gave Briggs & Stratton a run for their money. Unlike the Hart-Carter purchase of 1941, however, Tecumseh dismantled the Lauson Manufacturing Company corporate infrastructure and replaced it and Lauson upper management with new Tecumseh policies, practices, and personnel. By 1958, Tecumseh had retired most of the Lauson Manufacturing Company products and replaced them with their own updated products, though many of these new products were still labeled Lauson. The Tecumseh Power Division used the Lauson trademark to transition public awareness from the well-known Lauson trademark to the new Tecumseh trademark, and gradually the old Lauson name faded away until it became a forgotten memory. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this abbreviated whirlwind tour through the small engine production of the John Lauson Manufacturing Company and later the Lauson Manufacturing Company, and I hope you have found this narrative enlightening, informative, and at least a little entertaining. I try to attend many of the engine shows in North Carolina, so if you get to a show in North Carolina, there's a good chance that I'll be in attendance with my exhibit. If you see me, please stop by, introduce yourself, let me know what you think of this video series and of my YouTube channel in general. We can run a few engines, swap a few stories, and maybe we can get to know each other better. Till then, thanks for your ear.